What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. In this video we are looking at the week 7 first look. It was a pretty exciting week 6. Week 7 looks to be the same with the matchups that we have this week. It's going to be a fun one. Looking forward to breaking it down for the first time. We'll have a couple more videos out this week, but wanted to do a first look for week 7 on Tuesday. So let's get started. It was a fine Monday yesterday. Got in the money on Draftkings thanks to Kenny and Drake getting that long run at the end. It was kind of a low-scoring day, but you needed some of the Cardinals guys, had the Cardinals defense as well. Wanted to make a video for yesterday, but just had some audio problems, so I had to delete it, and I already tried twice, and didn't want to try for the third time because I was kind of running out of time there. But anyways, I kind of upgraded the mic, so hopefully it sounds better, and hopefully we have no problems going forward. So let's get into the video. As always, appreciate if you guys would hit the like button on the video, subscribe if you haven't already. We cleared 11,300 subscribers last week, so thank you for that. If you want to follow me on Twitter, we're approaching 6,000 followers there. You can check out my website, link is in the description. You can check out Thrive Fantasy. Their link is also in the description. So with all that being said, let's get started. So this week, just looking at the games, we have some fun ones to target. We have the Houston-Green Bay is going to be a fun game to stack up, and potentially Packers coming off their first loss of the year, the Texans coming off of a heartbreaking loss against the Titans. Last week, both offenses have pretty explosive players, especially Houston has come alive recently. The Packers with Adams, they got him back, although they only scored 10 points against the Bucs. Definitely expecting Rodgers to bounce back this week against a vulnerable Houston defense, so that is a potential game stack. We have the Falcons on the slate. They can put up points. You know, Julio, low ownership, kind of broke the slate. Not really, because there were some other guys that went off, but almost broke the slate last week. He was great in his return. We have the Saints on the slate. The Panthers have been playing decent defense, so it's not like you want to completely stack them up, but Drew Brees in the Dome was always a strong option. And then we still have the Seattle Cardinals game. That's going to be another stack up spot like Green Bay and Houston. And we have the Chargers on the slate. Probably roll them as a single game or single team stack, not wanting to stack the game against Jacksonville. But like the Chargers, they've looked great with Herbert as their quarterback. And we have the Chiefs on the slate. So a lot of high scoring teams. If you look at Vegas, right now the projected totals, you have like 5 teams above 29 points, which is kind of rare. So there's going to be some high scoring teams this week, expecting a high scoring slate. So let's try to nail down some of these key positions, starting with quarterback at the top. There is Russell Wilson, is $8,000, facing off against Arizona. They looked good, but that was against Andy Dalton. Now they're facing off against one of the best quarterbacks in football. Russell Wilson is $8K. He is more expensive than Mahomes, which you probably wouldn't have expected to see coming into this year, but it's been well deserving. For him, he has 19 touchdowns already on the season, just 3 picks. Looking great. He has over 25 fantasy points in every single game. Early on, he started on unconscious with 3 games above 34. It's definitely a spot if you were going to stack this game up. He's going to be in your player pool. Should be in your player pool. He is in consideration, especially if you get more value as the week goes on. It'll be a little bit easier to pay up for him, but right now I usually like to go a little bit cheaper at quarterback, so right now with the initial build, it's going to be tough. You definitely could play Josh Allen against the Jets. That is a blow-up spot for him. Coming off of back-to-back losses, they're probably going to take their anger out on the Jets like a lot of teams. He's in consideration, although he is expensive. I really do like the price tag on Kyler Murray again. He's only $7,100. He gives you so much upside with his legs. He has rushing touchdowns in every single game so far this season except for one, and that was against the Panthers where he threw for 3 touchdowns. His floor is just 24 fantasy points is his floor. Ceiling is above 30, just like Wilson. You save almost $1,000 going from Wilson to Murray, and he's at home in Arizona. Should be a good spot for him. So really like Kyler Murray's price tag. He jumps off. Aaron Rodgers also looks really appealing at $7,000. The price tag on him has come down. He looked awful against Tampa Bay. That's not the Aaron Rodgers we saw earlier this year or in the first 5 weeks. But his price tag has come down a bit, $500, down to $7K against Houston, who made Ryan Tannehill look amazing last week. They've made some other quarterbacks look great so far. They're giving up almost 30 points per game. Rodgers, stack him up with Adams. That's also going to be another potential game stack or even a team stack for the Packers side. You have Big Ben against Tennessee. That also could be a sneakier game stack. I don't think people will be all over that, but Tennessee's been putting up points. Pittsburgh's been putting up points. That's going to be interesting. Some quarterbacks that I'm kind of crossing off are Matt Ryan against Detroit. Even though he has the ability to go off, he also has like a very inconsistent floor. I'd much rather go up to Watson, who's only $100 more, go up to Rodgers or Murray, or go down to like Roethlisberger or Herbert, or even like Drew Brees at 6,100. So just some better spots, I think, than going with Stafford or Matt Ryan. So those are the two guys that I kind of cross out. I'm not that interested in Cam Newton either. He has just been up and down this year. He's been good with his legs, and he's been surviving off of that. He has 5 rushing touchdowns already this season. The 49ers defense looked better against Goff last week. They're not a team that you definitely want to just stack up, especially this Patriots offense hasn't looked great so far. So I'm not that interested in Cam Newton. Tannehill, the matchup is scary, but the upside is there. If you wanted to take a shot, it's not a cash play. It's more of a dart throw in tournaments. And then you have Teddy Bridgewater at 58. Looks fine if you needed a cheap quarterback. Definitely the best option out of the guys below 6K, I would say. Probably play Bridgewater before I play Minshew. Burrow looks fine too at 55 if you needed another cheap guy. And then I don't think I'm going cheaper than Joe Burrow at 55. There's nobody else that looks like they're going to be able to put up decent amount of fantasy points. So currently I will rank them as, well, just the top guys that are going to be the top 5 quarterbacks that I will have a lot of interest in are Wilson, Kyler Murray, Rodgers, Watson, Herbert. Those are the main guys that I'm really looking at. And then Breeze, if you needed a cheap guy, Breeze, and Bridgewater if you needed some cheap. If you needed just some cheap guys just to fit in, if you want to pay up at running back or pay up at receiver. So right now I'll go with Kyler Murray at 7,100 against Seattle. I just love getting quarterbacks that give you rushing upside. They just have such a higher ceiling. Moving on to running backs, the Saints should be getting Michael Thomas back this week, hopefully. Should be back. They looked pretty bad without him. Kamara was one of the saving graces, although they had to come back, but early on in that game against the Chargers, that offense looked pretty bad. It's mainly the play calling, like Sean Payton taking out Drew Brees on 3rd and 3 and running it with Taysom Hill on 2 third downs just makes no sense. So hopefully he's learned from that and they'll just rely on Kamara. So love Kamara at 79 against this Panthers defense. They're a spot where you just run against them. They are been giving up a ton of fantasy points to running backs. They're giving up over 120 yards per game. Kamara gets used out of the backfield in catching passes. He will get them like 10 to 15, maybe 20, or potentially to get to 20 carries on the ground, although Latavius Murray does take some of his work away. So Kamara is still 7,900. That looks like a really nice play. Elliott, 2 more fumbles for him against the Cardinals. He just hasn't looked great. Everybody thought that he was going to carry the team without Prescott, and his fumbling issues continued. He has fumbled in so many games this year already. Like, that has been the biggest issue for him. Lost 2 fumbles last week. Last game. Lost 1 against the Browns. Had another fumble against the Falcons. So, fumbling has been an issue for Elliott. They're going to make him the priority, getting him involved, but the matchup is, it's a spot for him where they can run against him, but every team knows to slow down the Cowboys now is just to slow down Elliott, so I don't think I'd rather go to, definitely rather go to Kamara than Elliott. Derrick Henry had a huge game. It's a tough spot against Pittsburgh. I'm not that interested, just because the spot's a lot tougher. People might be chasing from last week's performance. I'd rather go to Aaron Jones. I think this is a spot where the Packers get back on track. Like, they're not going to score 10 points again for the rest of the year, I'd say. And the matchup against Houston, they're giving up almost 30 points per game. They are super vulnerable on the ground. We saw Henry rush for 200 yards against them. I love Aaron Jones to potentially get a piece of Green Bay. You can completely stack them up if you want, but currently loving the price tag on Aaron Jones at 7,200. He's also just like some of the running backs I would like to target. He will get you some catches. He gets 5+ targets in every game so far this season except for 1. And he gets them like 20+ touches every single week. So his floor is there. He's also a touchdown monster, already with 7 touchdowns on the season. Other guys to consider are Kareem Hunt, 6,800 against Cincinnati. This is a good spot for him to continue to. He's been playing fine this year. Only got 15 touches last week. That was because Pittsburgh blew them out early on. But this is a spot where they can slow it down, rely on the running game more. 68 for Hunt looks like a fine price tag on him. He's not super expensive. You could go with Mike Davis if you wanted to against the Saints. He was a bit disappointing. Got into the end zone but had a fumble and wasn't that involved in catching passes. But overall, he's been playing great this year. So if you wanted to play him against the Saints defense, you could. Now things get a bit trickier here with Joe Mixon. If he ends up not being able to go, then you can play Giovanni Bernard in his place. But we'll see. I think he ends up playing this week. Then some of the other guys that are a bit riskier with Robinson and Edwards-Helaire. If Le'Veon Bell is able to make his return or make his debut for them. Not sure. He's not on the slate right now. I think he's probably going to make his debut in the next 2 weeks, maybe this week. But if that does happen, the matchup isn't that great against Denver, so it's not like Edwards-Helaire is sticking out as a must-play. And then for some reason, there's not that many tremendous options at running back in this range. Like McKinnon is not getting that much work, or might get more work this week with Mostert is doubtful. He's going to probably miss a few weeks. But I'm not that interested in paying that much against a good run defense. You have Melvin Gordon against the Chiefs. He got that DUI. He ended up sitting as expected, and we got a very cheap Phillip Lindsay to rush for over 100 yards. We'll see. I don't know if he will play or not. He's probably going to get suspended soon. If he ends up not playing again this week, then they did price up Lindsay a bit, but he still has more upside. He only didn't catch any passes, didn't get any targets, which was surprising. They had 6 field goals. They weren't able to push into the end zone, but that's what's going to happen a lot of the time. When you have a young quarterback and a young offense, they're just going to have to settle for field goals a lot of the time instead of touchdowns. But I think Lindsay looks fine against that Chiefs defense. Kelly with Eckler on the IR. I mean, Kelly's going to get some work. They also have Justin Jackson, so they have a couple guys that they can split some work with. But running back really looks like a spot where you want to pay up. Kenyon Drake coming off of a tremendous performance as expected against the Cowboys' rush defense, which have been awful. Only problem with Kenyon Drake is that he's not catching passes, so you're going to need him to get into the end zone. The matchup is a lot different against Seattle, so I'd much rather go with the passing game of the Cardinals, although 4,800 for Drake is definitely still interesting. He's definitely still in the player pool. But I think running back is a spot where you wanted to pay up a bit this week, and right now I like Jones, and we'll see if we can make something work with Jones and Alvin Kamara. So moving on to wide receiver, Hopkins is the most expensive guy at 8,200 against the Seattle defense. Didn't have a really good game. Had one long catch for 60 yards. Had 8 targets, but just couldn't connect early with Kyler Murray, and then Chris Kirk stole the show. If I am paying up at running back, I'm probably going to go a bit cheaper. We're going to have to go a little bit cheaper at some of these wide receiver spots. So right now, I'd say that Hopkins is still the top guy to pay up for, then Adams. And then we'll see if Thomas is in or not, but I'd rather go with Kamara than Michael Thomas this week. And then you have Metcalf is priced up. Probably will get Patrick Peterson coverage, but he has looked unstoppable thus far this year, with averaging almost 100 yards per game. Julio's price tag has come up a bit, 71. You just never really know who's going to go off between Ridley and Julio Jones. It always is the opposite guy who I pick, just for that reason. We'll see if any other wide receiver looks appealing in this below 6K range. Keenan Allen left that game really early. After catching that touchdown, didn't return. But he looks like a guy that you could potentially stack up with Herbert. He's just been getting a massive amount of targets. The coach said he's fine. That could be a really good spot at 6,200 against Jacksonville. They've been getting torched in the slot, torched by wide receivers. So we'll see. I think he might be a guy that I plug in here. And then we have A.J. Brown at 63. He looks good this week as well. Tyreek Hill is super cheap at just 6,400. Only caught 3 catches for 20 yards against Buffalo, but they've been making a priority to get him involved, so that's also a really good price tag there. OBJ, just thing with OBJ and the Browns offense is Baker just doesn't throw that much. He has not thrown for over 250 yards in any game so far this season. And it's a spot where they can just run it down the Bengals' throat, which is what they might try to do. So Beckham, that price tag is always looking appealing, but it's just not that offense for him. I mean, he would look so much better in a different team. Claypool looks good this week again if Deontay Johnson misses again this week. You have a very cheap Chark and Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju is now cheaper than Claypool, so that's definitely interesting. We keep going down here, see if more guys stick out, like Chris Kirk. Only 3 targets, but this is a guy that's been getting a consistent amount of looks from Kyler Murray. 7, 5, 5, and 4 targets. He has over 10 fantasy points in 3 straight games. He is just on the field a lot. Him and Hopkins he's in the field in every single 2 wide receiver sets except when he needs a breather. So I think he's a good pairing with Kyler Murray. If you needed a cheap guy, you have a Corey Davis should also potentially pair, or you could play him against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh defense is good, but they've been vulnerable against wide receivers, so I don't mind taking a shot on a cheap guy like that. Tim Patrick, I liked him last week. He got a couple of big catches, over 100 yards. Price tag on him has come a little up now, so it's not like a must. But he still looks fine, I think, at that price tag. See if Sammy Watkins is probably not going to be able to. We don't know if he's going to be able to play or not. Didn't practice at all last week. Maybe he makes his return. If not, then he could probably go back to Hardman, although he broke a lot of people's heart. But he might just be low owned this week. Hardman, or you could play Robinson if you needed another cheap guy. But there are a lot of cheap wide receivers in that 4K range that allows you to pay up a running back. So I think that right now is like, with not a lot of injury news right now, I think that is potentially a way to go. Like, Mike Williams, if Allen happens to miss a week, or even if you can still play him, he's the second wide receiver on the team. Jarvis Landry is down to 4,600. Matchup is great against Cincinnati. He just hasn't been getting a lot of attention from Baker Mayfield, but this is like one of the better spots that they've had, like coming off of Pittsburgh and the Colts the last 2 weeks. So, and he was fine in a good spot against Dallas. So I think Landry looks good. You have even more cheap guys like Hardman if Watkins misses. You have AJ Green, who 3,900 last week, potentially, said that it was crazy how cheap he was. Ended up having his best game of the season, 8 catches in a pretty tough spot against the Colts, almost 100 yards. He's only 4,300 this week, so in another great spot against a bad pass defense, AJ Green, he is probably, don't know if people are still gonna fade him, but I think he might be starting to get it going with Joe Burrow. I mean, you want to get him going. He got going a bit last week. It's a great spot to build off of that. So I think he's one of the first cheap receivers that I like. You have more cheap guys like Kirk to pair with Kyler Murray if you wanted to. He's basically going to get some decent looks from Murray. Not a ton, but it's a great spot for them to have to focus on the passing game. So you could do Kirk with Murray again. Still play AJ Green and then play another cheap guy like Landry. All 3 of these guys have pretty big play upside. They're all super affordable. So yeah, I think that is probably currently the way that I will be making my first look lineup. In that 5K range, you have some decent plays like Cooks, but I'd rather go to AJ Green. He's cheaper than T. Higgins. He's cheaper than Tyler Boyd. He has the most upside out of those guys based off of his track record. So I'd rather go with him. Kirk, Murray, they look great as a pairing. And then Landry just in a great spot against Cincinnati. That price tag is just super nice. So these 6 are right now the core for the video. I think at tight end, if you wanted to go with another guy in the 45 or in the 4K range, it's Tanyan looks fine. Henry looks good. Hooper looks okay. Ebron looks fine. And then Fells looks great. If basically everybody in the 4K range kind of looks good, but my favorite would be probably Henry and Tanyan. We'll see if Jonnu Smith ends up. If he's out, then we all know Frisker looked really good in stepping up at tight end for the Titans. He could be a decent play, although the matchup is a lot different. But we'll see his price tag. Anthony Frisker's only 3,000 if Jonnu Smith ends up missing. Tannehill only has a couple guys that he really likes to throw to. We'll be getting Corey Davis back this week, but I think he could be interesting. And then more cheap guys in that 3K range, I'd say, are probably going to be like Schultz at 3,900 or Greg Olson. I think they'll probably like to get Will Dissly more involved. He's also affordable at only 2,900, catching that touchdown, and Cardinals have always been vulnerable to tight ends. So that's the spot to go. And then defenses. Defense this week, if you wanted to pay all the way up, it's the Bills. They look great against the Jets. Every team looks good against the Jets. The Steelers look okay. The Titans have a really good offense, but they can get pressure to the quarterback. But I'd rather go with the Bills. I'd rather go with the Chargers. I think the 49ers look good. And then the 3K range, maybe potentially look at the there's nobody that looks that appealing. The Cowboys, just because the quarterback situation in Washington is kind of a mess. Although Cowboys defense has been the worst so far this year, but they look okay at 3K. And then punting, a defense, nobody looks that appealing. Maybe the Lions, just because Matt Ryan is a bit inconsistent. But I don't see myself going that cheap. I think defense is always a couple teams that look appealing. And this week, I potentially like the Cowboys to maybe get their season going against Washington. And then if not, pay up for the Bills, obviously, or you can pay up for the Chargers or the 49ers. I think the 49ers look great at just 3,300. So that's the DraftKings breakdown. I will kind of touch on Fanduel too, just because it's kind of going to be similar with the build, but I'll touch on it right now. All right, we'll see how Fanduel's pricing, how much different it is than DraftKings starting at quarterback. Mahomes is the most expensive, so it's different right there. You have Mahomes, Allen, Wilson, Murray. Like Murray still a lot. You have Watson. I like him at 8K. Don't like Matt Ryan that much. I don't like Drew Brees at that price tag. I don't like Cam Newton that much. I like Herbert. I like Roethlisberger. Don't like that price tag on Tannehill. I mean, the price tag is fine, but don't like the matchup. So probably stay in that like high 7 to low 8K range. Yo, Teddy Bridgewater is only 6,800. If you needed a punt at quarterback, play Bridgewater. That price tag is pretty silly. But I don't think I need to go that cheap right now with just the news that we have. So I will probably go back to my guy Kyler Murray, who has done nothing but put up good fantasy scores this year in a great spot against Seattle. Running back, Elliott is more expensive than Kamara, so give me Alvin Kamara, give me Jones, especially Jones. See if we can make something work with Kamara and Jones. There's not that many cheap running backs this week right now that look appealing besides like Kareem Hunt, maybe James Conner. And then you have potentially you could play McKinnon on FanDuel, but you're going to need some of these guys to get into the end zone. I think Drake looks better on FanDuel at 6,000. But yeah, that's kind of it. Let's see McKinnon's price tag. 55, so it's okay, but Patriots aren't the best to target guys on the ground. So I'd rather get the two guys that I expect to have big games, potentially have multiple touchdowns in both of these guys this week. At wide receiver, we saw the value plays, so you don't need to go all the way up. We'll see if DraftKings or FanDuel has the same kind of cheap guys. See the first off the price tag on AJ Green, 5,600. So that looks good right off the bat in a great spot against Cleveland. We have, you have Jarvis Landry also looks good. So both sites have kind of the similar price tags. Higgins is more expensive than Green. For some reason, you have John Brown as affordable at that price tag. Brandon Cooks, play him at 5,900 only. Needed another, like FanDuel, you can pay up a bit more, so we still have some flexibility here. If you wanted another cheap guy, you could probably play Landry again, or play Kirk, who's only 5,400. So something like this. Defense, see if we just put in the Bills defense. We have two guys left at 59. Like we're plenty of, we're looking great. Plenty of salary left. Tight end, potentially Hockenson, 59. Potentially Hunter Henry at 58. Both of those guys look good. Maybe Dalton Schultz at 52 against one of the worst teams at defending tight ends. And then you still have 6,700 left to get another, like, a decent player in here. Another decent guy in, like, maybe, if you're feeling Beckham, you could go there. But I already have, I think Landry looks a little bit better on his price tag. Could look at Keenan Allen, who looks to have a really good week this week if he ends up suiting up. And then see 4,900. Maybe Greg Olsen in that potentially high scoring game against Arizona. So a lot of different ways to go. Maybe go a little bit cheaper at defense, but currently I think I'm paying up at running back, going with some of these cheap wide receivers that have big play upside. Like in the 5K range on Fanduel, you have a lot of guys that look super appealing. Starts with Cooks, John Brown, Mike Williams, AJ Green, Kirk Hardman. If Watkins is out, even Watkins is playable at 53 if he does play. So a lot of very nice cheap receivers this week. So I think it's a week to pay up our running back with Jones and Kamara, pay down at receiver, and then get your quarterback of your choice. So that's it for the video. It's probably a long one, but hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it, and good luck this week.